Hello, extra time.
They point to the league not to get a hug because it damages your reputation. It makes people, when they read it, just laugh at you.
The single block, they're playing in the League One and they're playing in the Europa League and they're credit to the game in this country. Maybe we should get Stephen Kavanagh down to manage the Irish team.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the extratime.com podcast. Your host Luke Jordan. Did I say Stephen Kavanagh alongside me? Stephen, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, Luke. Thanks for having me on. How's things with you?
Good. You enjoying your week off like me?
Oh yeah, of course. Just teaching art to doddle.
Yeah. It's a handy enough gig to teach, isn't it? It's not too bad.
Oh yeah, walk in the park.
Later on the show, we chat to James Chambers about his career in football and his time in the United States coaching. But first, a quick run through the SSC Electricity League fixtures from last weekend, the results rather. In the Premier Division on Friday night, we had Pats 4, Cork City 0, UCD 0, Shells 0, Dundalk 1, Sligo Rovers 2, Bohs 0, Shamrock Rovers 2. We'll come back to that game a little bit later on. And Derry City 0, Drogheda 1, a great result for Drogheda away in the Brandywell. Monday night games then in the Premier Division, Cork City 1, Dundalk 0, a great bounce back there for Colin Healy's man after disappointing defeat the Pats on Friday. Derry 0, Bohs 1, a great result for Bohs, bounce back 2. Drogheda 1, Pats 3, Shells 2, Sligo Rovers 1, and Shamrock Rovers 3, UCD 0. In the first division, we have Treat United 3, Longford Town 2, Bray Wanderers 1, Athlone Town 0, Wexford 0, Galway United 4, Cove Ramblers 1, Wharf United 3, and Kerry 1, Finn Harps 1. Stephen, you're at the Dublin Derby game. We'll start with the big one from last weekend. Disappointing result, both considering the form they came into the game, but I suppose Shamrock Rovers, is it fair to say they got the kind of deserve they got in the game, the better team overall? Or
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say they probably were the better team overall, as much as it pains me to say it. Like first half in particular, it was fairly cagey. I don't think there was a huge amount really to separate them. Bohs kind of lost out towards half time. I think it was just kind of a goal that really it probably could have been defended better. And I mean, kind of for the first half in particular, a lot of the time Rovers are just kind of their game plan for some of it did seem to be just kind of give the ball to Rory Gaffney and hope for the best. He was kind of troubling Christian Novak and Kasper Radikowski there for pretty much the entire game. And it's probably, I know they're a new centre back pair, and it's probably the toughest run that they've had so far in the league. But yeah, no, to be fair, like while Rovers didn't trouble too much, they especially like Bohs were probably on top marginally for the first maybe 15 or so minutes. Then it was fairly even. Then kind of towards half time, Rovers kind of got on top. Then they probably got the goal they deserved then just before half time. Then afterwards, after half time, Bohs didn't really come out at all, which is unfortunate, especially because they've been playing so well under Declan Vine this season, but obviously the game against Shelbourne being the exception. So yeah, disappointing result. I'd say like it's by far and away the worst performance of the season, I'd say, so far. And to do it against the champions, you know, it is disappointing, but I don't think it's something that we can be too disappointed with, considering kind of where we started this season, how we started, and kind of the expectations that Rovers have on them as well so far.
were you surprised James McManus didn't start?
No, I don't think so. As good a player as he is, he has only turned 18 there a month or so ago. And I think kind of going into a Dublin derby like this, considering where both teams were in the league, kind of the buzz and things like that around Dalymount, I'm not sure if it's fair to say to him that it would have been too much, but I can understand Declan Vine's decision to kind of keep him out of the firing line and not put him on until later on in the game. And to be fair to him, he did do very well when he came on.
How good were Rovers in the night?
Yeah, good. I kind of, again, sort of one of those things that as the champions and as kind of pretty much everybody's favourite to go on and win the league again, probably not as good as they could have been, not as good as a lot of people would have expected them to be. I suppose that kind of not a huge surprise, considering they've had kind of a hit and miss start to the league so far, which myself included, I don't think anybody expects that to continue. So yeah, I think it was kind of one of those things where they were good. They were good value for the win, but at the same time, I don't think they played up to their full potential.
Who was best player in the night?
Best player in the night. I know I will say Rory Gaffney give did give the two lads at centre back quite a good run. Byrne Burke played well for Rovers as well, and then obviously like there's the likes of Ali Coote, who I think I said in the podcast the last time I was on, kind of it was a little bit hit and miss whether he'd come back after everything that happened with Liam Birth and all that kind of stuff. I have to take it all back now and eat the words because he's been absolutely unbelievable this season, and I am just counting my lucky stars every day that he stayed. And yeah, I'd say there was for pretty much for quite a lot of the game. I don't think Bohs covered themselves in glory, really. It was kind of a sloppy start-stop match a lot of the time. But yeah, I'd probably say the three up top for Rovers were what was the difference between winning and losing?
But as for the Easter Monday then, obviously some bounce back then going to Brandywell. I know they had disappointing result themselves on the Friday night losing the Drogheda, but then Bohs going to town Monday night. It was a notorious difficult place to go, but to get 3 points there, Dean Williams penalty, it's a great feeling to get back up in ways.
Yeah, and it seems to be a ground the Bohs haven't really had a huge amount of luck with in recent years as well. And again, I think I was watching it obviously here, I wasn't able to go up to it, and it's just kind of testament to what Declan Devine has done so far with the squad. And as he keeps saying himself, it's still a very new squad. There've been loads of players in, loads of players out. They've kind of only been together, I think he's mentioned 14 or 15 weeks or something like that altogether. And look, I'm under no illusions here. It was by no means a Hollywood performance or anything like that. No one was played off the park or anything, or anywhere close to it. It was a fairly, scrappy match at times, but it was one of those things where, especially after the disappointment of Friday against Rovers, I think Bohs needed to go up there and give a good account of themselves, which they did, and then obviously got the penalty and scored it thanks to Dean Williams, and especially because there was a couple of changes and things like that. Afalabi didn't start, Ali Coote didn't start, Chris Twardek started, and Williams as well, who hasn't had a huge amount of game time. So the fact that we were able to kind of make those changes and a different centre back pairing as well with Horton coming in, the fact that we were able to make those changes and still grind out the win, and for the last kind of 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe in particular, it was really grinding out the win. Like Derry had two or three really, really good chances towards the end. And if you look at any kind of Bohs fan page or Bohs forum or Facebook page or Twitter page, whenever, kind of the general consensus seems to be, oh, we would have lost that game last year. And we definitely would have. If like it seemed to be a really bad trend that we've hopefully, touch wood, booked now this season, that kind of going into the last 5-10 minutes of games last year, even amongst the fans, there was no expectation of Bohs actually being able to hold on to the win. I think, like, I can't remember exactly what the stats were. We threw away a rake of points last year in the last 5 or 10 minutes or even in injury time. So the fact that this year, on more than one occasion, I think we've been able to kind of dig in and grind out the win. It's a hell of a turnaround from last year.
Just on the game itself, do you think it was a penalty? I know Declan Devine was not too impressed after the game. He was essentially saying, look, I don't like blaming referees, but he was claiming it wasn't a penalty on the night and thought it was very soft. What was your own viewpoint on it from looking at the LOI TV camera?
Declan Devine said it wasn't a penalty.
Sorry, Rory Higgins.
Right, okay.
Declan Devine definitely thought it was a penalty. Sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Rory Higgins.
Right.
Rory Higgins said it was not a penalty. My apologies.
No, for me, I have to say it was a penalty all day long. It looked like Twardek was sandwiched in between the two Derry defenders. It looked like, I can't remember exactly who it was, but they kind of tried to get their leg in and scoop the ball away. But I mean, there's definitely contact. The leg goes in front of Twardek, makes contact with him, he goes over, and it's a penalty every day of the week for me. I think the the main kind of issue with the Derry coaches and the Derry fans will have been the fact that they were denied a penalty themselves only maybe 2 minutes beforehand, which I didn't actually. I don't think I saw a replay of it. I might have only seen one, but certainly for me, the Bohs one that was given was definitely a stronger case than the Derry one that wasn't given.
How surprised are you how well Bohs done this season?
Oh, hugely, hugely, but pleasantly. Like, I know we had kind of a decent end to last season. I know we had beaten Sligo and things like that, and it died out. But the fact, I think, that Declan Devine's come in, and obviously he has had a decent reputation. He's had a decent career with Derry in particular, and got like I say, a good reputation. But it was a little bit out of left field, his appointment, and no one really saw it coming. And then he's brought in a rake of new players. His big thing, I'm sure I've probably said it before, was the fact that he got rid of so many different players as well. And last year, one of the big ones that really annoyed Bohs fans was the quarterfinal game against Shelbourne and Talca. And I was at it. It was probably one of the worst memories I can possibly think of as a Bohs fan. It was absolutely horrific. So the fact that I think there was about 8 of the players that day that started, I think, have left the club thereabouts. So the fact that he's been able to kind of come in and, with the spine of the squad is nearly completely different. Okay, the reintroduction of Talbot back in is going to help because he's such a leader and quality keeper. Bringing back a Keith Buckley from being down in Australia for the year as well is going to be a big factor. But even just the way they've been playing, the way they've been able to manage games. Like I say, last year, at the last 5 or 10 minutes, we threw away so many points. There's been much better game management from the squad as a whole, like from goalkeeper right up to Afalabi or whoever's playing up top. And he seems to have kind of, even just with his demeanour, he's really kind of endeared himself to the fans, to the community, to the way that the club kind of go about their business, and the way and how the club interact with their fans. He's really, really bought into that. So he's really endeared himself with the fans, and obviously the fact that the results are going our way as well is testament to him, and long may it last.
Obviously, you've got through now nearly the first round of fixtures that we have. Actually, everyone's played 9 games now. What team has impressed you the most that you've seen so far outside of Bohs, obviously?
That's a good question, because a lot of teams have been kind of stop-start. It's a little bit of a weird one. Like, I haven't seen a huge amount of some teams, but even the likes of I know the first day of the season, Cork really put it up to Bohs, and then going toe-to-toe with Rovers, losing out kind of to the last kick of the game, I think, to make it 4-4. That's been fairly impressive. Kind of Pats started badly, and then I think have had 2 or 3 wins then on the row in a row. Same with Rovers, have 3 games in a row. So I think, like, when you look at the league table, I think Bohs are 6 points clear. And then I think it's Cork, who are second last, are 5 or 6 points clear of UCD. But there's only a handful of points then in between second and ninth. So I think it's kind of hard to, obviously with Bohs being 6 points clear. Other than that, it's kind of hard to pick out a team who's kind of impressed people the most.
We mentioned Pats there. If you were to ask me 2 weeks ago, or listening back to previous episodes, I was obviously fuming. The last 10 days, bit better. I will caveat and say that their 3 wins, I would expect for Pats to win, if that makes sense. Like, playing UCD at home, that should be a win. Cork or Briefly from Road, that should be a win. Because getting 4 goals, obviously didn't see the game myself as I was away, but obviously watched the game Monday night against Drogheda. Done well. Drogheda had a decent start this season. Kevin Doherty has done really well. So going there, getting 3 points, albeit kind of 2 bad injuries coming to the Derby game on Friday, which we'll talk about later on. Mulroney, and looks like it might not be too bad, but Joe Redmond did pull up a hamstring, and that's usually a sight for someone that's going to be out for 4 to 5 weeks at least, so that's going to be disappointing. But yeah, I think, obviously my own point of view is Bohs have been the team I've been most impressed with myself. Obviously, come to Richmond Park, players complete that. Were you at that game actually? Were you in Richmond Park Day?
No, it wasn't that day actually. No,
but no, they were very good. Before we wrap up this section, Stephen, what do you think then? A lot of Bohs fans rather are getting a bit excited maybe about the prospects of a title charge this season, or even being in the hunt for it. Is it premature, you think, or have you seen now enough body of work, especially going to Brandywell with a 1-0, that maybe they can't sustain this?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's obviously going to be the hope for every Bohs fan. I think a lot of the, quote unquote, getting carried away is a little bit kind of tongue in cheek, because it seems to wind up so many other supporters so much. So obviously, like, anytime any of the Bohs coaching staff or any of the players are asked about it, they're always given the same answer of, we're just looking to the next game, taking the next game after game, whatever the different variations, the cliche that you'd like to put in. So I think it kind of is a little bit of that still, just kind of keeping it handy, just keeping it game by game. But I think the longer this sort of run of form goes on, the more difficult it will be to contain excitement, because I think I was on the podcast at the very start of the year and I was saying that we'd probably be hoping to finish maybe 5th, and if we're very lucky, push for 4th. But at the moment, especially after beating Derry, the start that Rovers have had, obviously, like I say, I expect them to come back, and I think everybody else does. But if that kind of trend continues, it'll be difficult to contain the excitement. But at this stage, I think it's still it's still very early days. So while yes, I would like to say absolutely we're in the hunt, we're going all guns blazing for the title. I would still think that for a lot of Bohs fans, 2nd or 3rd would still be the main aim at this stage of the season.
Go on, go all guns blazing. Just say you're going to win the league. Come on.
If we're going to win the league, Luke, I mean, what else can I say? I mean, it's basically set in stone. Pats are coming to the home of the champions elect on Friday. It's going to be great crack altogether.
And just before we get to our chat with James Chambers, our reporter Macdara Ferris called up with Shamrock Rovers head coach Stephen Bradley after the Monday night game with UCD. Let's have a listen.
Stephen, you must be pleased with the week that you've had. 3 wins, 3 clean sheets, and tonight against UCD, first home win of the league campaign.
Yeah, I think we said last week that the aim was obviously to set ourselves up to be on with the Shelbourne, looking at 9 points for the week, and we've done that with a difficult away game on Friday, and then tonight we've respected the game and been really good, and obviously got 3 points, and so you have to be pleased with the week.
You limited UC really to kind of the one shot that Alan Manus needed to save, and so kept another clean sheet. Like, were you happy with the defensive performance that you really limited what UCD came?
Yeah, we controlled the game. I think they had one breakout in the first half, but other than that we controlled the transition, which they were always going to try and play on. I'm the only criticism we have, we could have probably went up the gears in the first half when we scored the second one, but they're coming off the back of Friday as well, so you have to give them that. But yeah, I was really happy with the performance in terms of we didn't give anything up. We never looked like giving anything up, and we completely dominated the game. You
spoke on Friday about Graham Burke and Jack Byrne's performance, really good against Bohemians, and it was really good to see them. They were the guys that got the goals. Graham got his 4th and 5th of the season, and Jack got his 2nd of the season. Yeah, I think both are just continuing on the form. They're really on at the moment, working extremely hard, and obviously adding goals and assists, and when you have them two on that form and with that mindset, they're a handful for anything to play against, and UCD found that out tonight. And you were able to use your bench. I know there's a bit of illness in the camp. I know Richie Hell wasn't in the squad this evening. You were at least able to name Gary Neal on the bench, but because you were 3-0 up, you were able to make changes on the hour mark a little after, just to, I suppose, give players a little bit of a break and also bring players in, maybe with Friday in mind. Yeah, a bit of both. Like you said, the illness is still in the camp a little bit, but I wanted to get Justin and Conan on the pitch. I think Conan, with what he's come off the back of, it was great that he's having back out there on the pitch, and
and you can see his quality, whether from dead ball or in general, both footed, naturally gifted, and a joy to work with. So it was great to get him back on the pitch, and Justin's worked extremely hard behind the scenes, and it was good to get them two back on the pitch today.
We've spoken a little bit at the start of the season. The results weren't going the way you wanted, but you were adamant that the performance were good, and I think the stats back that up. Is it nice just maybe a bit of luck going the other way, and it means that the results are matching the performances, which are very good? Yeah,
I think the reason there was no panic within the dressing room or within the group was because we knew that our eye was telling us one thing and stats was telling us the same thing, and when you match them two together, you're usually on us. So we knew we were right there, and we knew if we stayed there that the results would come on the back of the performances. We know we're in the results business, and that's the key to it. But we've always focused on the performance, and we knew we were right there, and like you said, the last few weeks now we've got the results to match that performance, which is good. But I don't see the performance levels have gone up dramatically than what they were early on. I just think that we're being more ruthless in both boxes.
And finally, just looking ahead to Friday, you've Shelbourne. The last couple of scoreless draws you've had have actually been against Shelbourne. They obviously play with a deep block. It's up to you guys to try and break them down. Yeah. I suppose you'll be hoping maybe they might show maybe a little bit more offensive, maybe that you can get around them, but I presume that's what you're working during the week to try and break a low block side down.
Yeah, exactly. We know the way they're going to come. I don't think there'll be any surprises. They'll come deep and try and hit us in transition or set plays, so we got to make sure we respect that first of all, because there's more than one ways to play a game of football and to win a game of football, and we know that, so we got to respect that. But we definitely got to work extremely hard to try and break them down. I think when you've watched the games, we've had really good opportunities to go and hurt them, and I think if you score an early goal, it's a totally different game. If you look at Talcott a few weeks back, Rory has a really good chance, and so is Neil Farouja, and if one of them goes in, it's a different game. They have to come and play. So we know that when we get our opportunities on Friday, we need to take them.
Get in touch. You can email us at extratimelive@gmail.com or tag us on Instagram using the hashtag League of Ireland, or tweet us at extratimenews.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to the second half. I'm delighted to have James Chambers on the show. James, how are you?
I'm good, lads. Thanks a million for having me on.
How's life in Colorado at the moment?
Yeah, life in Colorado is going okay. The season started quite well. We're 5 games in and we're sitting on 10 points. So 3 wins, a draw, and 1 loss. And Eamon Zoid knocked us out of the Open Cup last week, so we're pretty happy about that. To be honest, it's not a tournament that we were overly concerned about.
Why is that? Why is the case? Is it a pre-season tournament or what is it?
No, it's a cup competition. Well, when I say it with tongue in cheek, it's a cup competition, and we're solely focused on the league. It would have been nice to progress through a round because you get the opportunities of playing against MLS teams, and we had a couple of players that were injured. We played some academy kids that night, and we didn't do enough to win the game, and that's twice the last 2 years that Amo's done us over coming down here. So he's on top of the world at the moment.
You're saying me off air there's a big Irish connection in the USL at the moment, like a lot of ex-pros and current players playing over there.
Yeah, there's a rake load of us, so it's good. Every couple of weeks you bump into someone, or you're looking forward to meet somebody that's in the league or has been in the league, and you get to catch up with. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of players that are currently playing, a lot of players that have moved into the coaching side of things, like Colin Falvey's in that bracket, Richie Ryan. There's certainly a lot of us.
Yeah, the one thing I remember chatting to Richie Ryan there a while ago, and the club he was playing for was a Passive Locomotive. Your name is quite interesting as well, the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. It's an interesting name.
Yeah, it's a little bit too long for the teletext screen, isn't it? So yeah, we're based in Colorado Springs, so we're an hour south of Denver, and a switchback it's a slanty road that comes down, a zigzag road that comes down from a mountain. So I didn't know that until I moved here, and obviously now I'm far more familiar with it.
What's the life like in Colorado?
Yeah, it's a little bit slower paced than Philadelphia, where I was for 6 years. But yeah, I enjoy it. The mountains like Cheyenne Mountain, Pikes Peak are right across the road behind us. So with the views, the scenery, everything like this is like that's spectacular, and it's it's an enjoyable place to live. It's very scenic. It's just a little bit slower paced.
Just say, look, we'll take it back to the start, kind of, James, before we maybe get further into the United States talk. Whereabouts you grow up in Dublin?
Baldoyle. I was spent most of my life in Baldoyle. I was there from when I was 9, but before that I lived in Castleknock. So more or less most of my teenage years were spent on the north side in Baldoyle.
What was your first club?
First club was Castleknock Celtic. I bounced around a little bit, no surprise, but I bounced around even as a child. I played with Castleknock to start, then I went to Baldoyle, and I went to Trinity, and then my dad had a team that was down in Dooneycarney that played in May Park, St. Martin's boys, and that was at under 10s. So I left them and then went to Shells just as they started their kind of well, it wasn't an academy then, it was an underage youth setup. So I went there at under 11.
So a journeyman by the age of 10 with 4 clubs.
Yeah, and then I didn't really lose it after that, did I?
No, it's interesting though. Again, what was your happiest time in terms of playing with the clubs there? Like, was it Castleknock or Baldoyle? Or?
Castleknock was like, my dad was the manager as well, and we were under 7s at the time, so it was more just figuring it out. I enjoyed it because I played with lads out of school. Then I went to Baldoyle and played with my friends. Trinity was good because I was playing with different people that outside of my friend group, and I really enjoyed that because we had some good players at that level. But I'd say my most enjoyable was with St. Martin's because I was starting to understand a little bit more at such a young age about like the game. And I know under 10 this sounds crazy, but like the meaning of the club to like my dad and even to other members of my family, like that it was pretty big. So I took a lot of pride in that. And by then at 10, like my dad was able to be a little bit harder on me and stuff. So I really enjoyed that time. Really, really enjoyed that time at St. Martin's.
How big of an influence was your dad in your career? Would he been the formative years the most important coach you had, or was there anyone else that was kind of important in those years?
Yeah, I think no. There was a lot, like up to probably, I'd say the younger ages up to 10. I'd say I took a lot from a couple of different people. Like again, like you're a child, how much you're taking in information, but do you remember what the coach told you when you were under 8 in May? Like no, I don't. But I do remember, like my dad was the manager, and basically he was pretty hard. Where like if I'd scored a goal or something along those lines, or if I was the top scorer at the end of the year, like I wasn't getting like top goal scorer or player of the year, and like that someone else was getting it because he didn't want to be seen as giving favoritism to me or anything like that. So that toughened me up, and I didn't like it at the time, but it held me in good stead. And then I think when I went to Shells, it was almost a time for me to move on to a different level and probably be around different coaches that can maybe help me in different ways while still having my dad in the background giving me advice and pushing me and telling me that, yeah, that was good or this was bad, X, Y, and Z. But I have fond memories of Jim Maguire, who was at Stella Maris and at Shells for a long, long time. He was a big influence on me from U11 to U16.
You remember your first pair of boots, actually?
Yeah, I do. They were Deodoras. Roy Keane's Deodoras.
That's 2002 era, is it? 2002, 2000? No, 2000 would have been, would it? Deodoras?
Possibly. No way, Ginny. I'm an 87 baby, so yeah, they were the first pair I definitely remember. I do remember I had a pair of black Lottos. I bought them. I was probably about 11 and I bought them. And then they brought the coloured boots out a couple of months later. But I wasn't allowed to get another coloured pair of boots because I'd already bought them and they hadn't ripped. So I went and got spray painted them. But then it fucking rained, didn't it, when I was wearing them? So they just went back to being black.
That's Irish weather for you. Actually, at the moment it's absolutely lashing rain, so some things never change. In terms of the Shells setup going there, moving to what did you say, age 11 going to Shells, was it around that time?
Yeah, under it was right as under 11 started. Yeah.
What was the setup like? Obviously, it's completely different than what it'd be now in terms of the national leagues and all. But from your own recollection, what was the setup like at Shells? Was it any way more professional, say, being a Stella Maris, or what was it like?
Well, like for me, it was different because I'd obviously played with, like, I wouldn't say local clubs, but I didn't play with Stella. I didn't play with St. Kevin's as a young kid. You know what I mean? So I didn't know what their environments were like. But when I went to Shells, it was almost like Shells were a big League of Ireland club, and they were trying to put this structure in place of an underage setup, and there was a lot of teams getting formed at the exact same time. So I'd say from the outside, the perception was, yes, it looked like it was trending in the academy direction. And when we got in there, certainly we were looked after really, really well. Like, just training facilities back then where we trained up in Rosmini by Tolka, and we were able to, then we trained sometimes on a Friday night and we'd go and watch the game, Shells and Tolka on Friday evening. So yeah, it certainly felt like it was more structured, I would say. Not professional, but just more structured and long term in mind.
Those squads you play with growing up in going through Shells, was there many players that made it into the League of Ireland scene or further on?
From our age group, from under 11, our age group, probably not. There was a lot of players that would have come over to America at 16 or 17, went to Closh to Ida. But the year younger than us, it was Anthony Stokes, Robert Bailey, like players of that caliber, Simon Madden, Gary McCabe, like all those types of players, they would have come across the year later or maybe the next year, a year or two later from Cherry Orchard. So that was when the academy started to form, I would say. And they had obviously the link with Manchester United, and they were able to get a pull on players coming across and joining Shells at that stage.
Yeah, some list of players there actually that you mentioned, some good players too. In terms of then yourself, like, did you have an opportunity to go abroad in terms of a trial or?
Yeah, I had a couple. I had, like, I think the first one I went to was Stoke, and that was very overwhelming. At I was probably 14, and I'd been in international, I'd say, camps and stuff like that, and selective squads, but I'd never been able to go over, and finally got the opportunity, and it was an eye opener for me for sure of what was required, and just like the level and what it was going to take at that level. You know what I mean? So I had a couple of opportunities to go over. I had Aberdeen and stuff like that, but it never transpired. There was a chance for me to go when Shells wanted money, and then I was just happy at that time with some personal circumstances to stay and be full time with Shells at probably 18.
What did you find overwhelming? You mentioned there was Stoke. Was there any particular thing you didn't like abroad? Was just the homesickness, or?
Not even that. It was more just a trial, and it was my very first experience of being on trial, and didn't really know what to expect. It was just like, oh yeah, like everybody kind of goes on trial like this. This is what it's like, and then you go over, and the game's maybe a little bit faster. There's probably little better players over there. You know, you're playing the perception as well from the outside. Oh, you're over at Stoke, and I think we went and we played. Barnsley at the time, who were they weren't Manchester United, but they certainly weren't like minnows by any stretch of the imagination. So just little things like that. I think the perception sometimes got the better of me as well, and then understanding what the level was like. And then I'd had a couple after that. I'd been to Everton twice within 2 weeks, and they were basically ready to give me an answer after 2 weeks, and it was a no, which was fine. I think just the experience overall after the first one was pretty positive. I understood what it was like, but the first one certainly caught me off guard a little bit.
Just go back a little bit there, James. Just going when you first joined Shells, like, did you find even though you were at such a young age, did you find that there was like much of a difference in terms of the setup or in terms of the quality of players and things like that around you?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I started to grow a little bit more individually, like at that age. I know it's hard to say that at 10 or 11, but like the players that we were playing against, it was the DDSL at the time, and the league we were in at under 11. We went in at under 11, I think, major, because we were a brand new team, and the idea was to win and get up to the Premier at the time, and we won the league, which was great. But then we went in at under 12, and all the focus from under 12 to under 13 is the Kennedy Cup, and we were in that Premier League. We had like Lourdes, Home Farm, Belvo, Joey's were in that league as well. Heavens were in that league. Like, the players that were playing in that league, and every week you're playing against a top team, against top players, so you have no choice but to get better. So we had like Joxer Kelly played for Lourdes, Ian Morris at Kevin's. There was Finner was there. There was Carl Clifford was there. Belvo had James Lee. Home Farm had Gary Walsh, Darren O'Day. So like we had we had internationals in waiting essentially at under 14, under 15 playing. We were playing against them every week, and you had no choice but to get better. So the level in the DDSL at that time was at an all-time high, I felt, and it was incredible experience.
You kind of half answered my next question there with some of the names. I know Luca had asked you if there was any players that you had played with that had gone on to play in the league or play further afield. Is there any player, even one player, that you remember coming up against and thinking, my God, he's good?
Yeah, certainly, there was, at underage level or throughout my career?
At underage.
Yeah, at underage level, I think Joxer always had an aura about him, and people were always like, "Oh, Joxer, who's that Lewards," and stuff like that. And I got to play with Joxer on numerous occasions and got to know him. And just as a player back then at underage level, he was incredible. Honestly, he controlled games at 12 and 13 that you just don't see. And for the size of him then, even when we went through a growth and grown through puberty and everything like that, Joxer never really took a massive stretch. And before he went to Liverpool, he was still the same size, but he was still as good of a player. We were all growing at a rate of knots. And he never did, but he was still the best player by a country mile. So he'd be the one that would stick out to me as a player that played against and got to play with as well.
When did you break into the Shelbourne first team? That would have been 2004 or 5, would have?
Yeah, we were. I think we were under 16s at the time, and there used to be an old under 21 team, a / reserve team, and I was training with them a little bit and got to play with them a little bit, and was doing well, and almost then was with the under 21s. And right as I was finishing my leaving cert, Nutsy had said to me, I'd been in with them a little bit, and Nutsy was like, "We want to offer you a full-time contract," and this was off the back of the Aberdeen offer, and the situation wanting some money, because I'd been there for 6 or 7 years, so they were entitled to some compensation, and Aberdeen weren't willing to pay that. So I was happy enough with the time to go full-time at Chelsea. It was the summer, I think it was the summer of 2004, is probably early July is when I went in there, yeah.
What was it like? Because I know, obviously, in recent history, they're probably one of the most successful teams, winning the league, and obviously having a great dress from there as well. What was it like training with those players, just off the top of my head, even Owen Heary, Jim Crawford, Jason Byrne, Alan Moore was there. There was so many littered players in that team. It must have been a great experience as a young player going to dress them like that with those professional players.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And it was almost different because we'd experience on a Saturday morning, when we played with the 21s in that reserve league, we'd have the back end of who didn't play on the Friday night, or who didn't dress or anything like that, or get in the 18, stuff like that. We'd have those lads playing. So you'd play with them. There'd be 3 or 4 of us that would play with them on a Saturday morning up in the AUL sometimes, or we'd play away. And so you got to know the back end of that team. So Buzzer Rowe was in that. Detzer was in that team. There was a lot of players in that team, and then we were able to get some of the experience. I think Davy Cawley was there a couple of times. Alan Cawley was there as well. I'm just trying to think. Alan Moore. So these players coming back from injury too. So we got to experience that. Now you wouldn't see Harry, you wouldn't see the players who played every week, but when you went into that dressing room and you saw the level, that experience for me as a full-time professional at that moment was absolutely incredible. They were the players that were at the top of the league. They were the best players in the country. It was an elite squad, and you just every day you just had to train to the best of your ability. The intensity you trained that was unbelievable. Really was.
What were those players you've kind of mentioned there? What were they like around young players in the dressing room? Were they approachable? Were they standoffish? How would you find as a young player going to the dressing room with those type of players?
No, I loved it. They were really good. They had the right balance where they'd be really hard on you some days. If you were poor, they'd be really hard on you. But if you were good, they'd almost put their arm around you and stuff like that. But again, you're coming into their environment. They're challenging for leagues. You have to hold the level. If you hold the level, it's almost like you get the nod of approval. And then when you don't hold the level, you get the wrath of it as well. And I think finding that balance with the players, if you were on one of their teams and you gave the ball away that cost a goal, like they're going to let you know. And I don't think that happens in this day and age enough. Like the old school, sometimes it gets knocked, but just how it was for me personally, it helped mould me.
Did you get a chance to train Wes Houlihan?
Yeah, Wezzo was there. Yeah, Wezzo was a joy as well every day. Yeah. Like just to be around, and even as a person as well. Him and Buzzer were very close. Buzzer Rowe. So like like people like that, really good. Like Rogie was in there too. Colin Hawkins, Jamie Harris. Like there genuinely was like no bad players in that squad. Glenn Fitzpatrick, Gary O'Neill, Crowe. Like there's just top people and even better players.
Yeah. Is it what was it like at the time, I suppose, a young player being there? Because obviously the club itself ran such a high, the European performances, the back-to-back league titles, like it must be in a great environment for a young player to go into a first like that. That's just, you kind of touched on, right? Kind of expecting success and wanting to build on that.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think we, like, when I got in there, that we were still challenging, I believe, and I think it started to falter towards the end of my first season. I think I made my debut against Cork down in Turner's Cross, and it was difficult because at that point then we kind of knew as a squad and Pat had known that we weren't going to win the league, and everything was focused on the following year at that point. So that following year was when I went out to Waterford to get more and more experience, and then obviously everything went with the demise of the club then that following winter. So it was 18 months after I signed that everything had started to go a little bit downhill. But those 18 months being in the full-time environment with those players was unbelievable. And again, it wasn't like they were, at that moment when I was in there, it wasn't like they were winning titles and they were like cruising. There was some really difficult moments, like when they weren't performing at the level that was required, and to see that firsthand and almost feel it and experience it was unbelievable too, because it's not all hunky-dory in the garden all the time in this industry, certainly not.
What was it like then coming back from, obviously you had your loan spell at Waterford, getting that experience? How different was the club when you returned then in 2007, 2008?
Yeah, it was a lot different, and in hindsight, like I was probably like I'd had a very good relationship with Jim Crawford at the time, and we'd spoken and we're like, right, well, he was going to stay, I was looking to stay, and in hindsight I probably should have looked after myself in that moment in time. I feel like I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but I was at a point where I probably should have been playing week in, week out in the Premier Division and continuing to get better and grow as a player. And I chose to stay with the club, that's fine. But the First Division almost, it didn't help me at that moment in time. There was moments I didn't help myself. I was a pig-headed arsehole at times and an aggressive so-and-so. So I caused my own trouble in games at that time, like getting booked and sent off. And just it was a weird stage for me. Like I wanted to help the club, but it just didn't happen. And for 2 years I was there, and it genuinely probably hindered my development when I was 20 and 21 at that time. Like I should have had, by 21 I should have had 100 Premier Division games under my belt, and I would have been 100 times better off, especially after the experience in Waterford.
Is that where, so you mentioned the kind of the yellow cards and the frustration, is that where the frustration stemmed from? Was just the off the field matters and it was spinning onto the pitch?
No, it wasn't anything. No, it wasn't anything to do with the club, or the club were great, and Joe Casey came in and everybody was fantastic, and we all had the same common goal to get the club back up to the First Division. It was more the level that I was performing at, and the level that the team was performing at, or the level of the league. There was a couple of factors, and I probably just had a lot of aggression in me from other personal issues when I was 17 or 18 that like came out at that time when I faced a little bit of adversity, if I'm being honest with you, that I just didn't know how to handle it. Possibly I don't, if I had been playing week in and week out in the Premier Division, would I have had them issues? Possibly. I still could have been an aggressive plonker getting yellow cards and red cards, like, you know what I mean, for being a mouth. So I don't know. It's just the way I look at it now, and I can only go off the experience that I had.
What happened in terms of, because obviously after the 2008 season, you went to England, but very quickly came back to Drogheda then to sign for 2009 season. What happened in that kind of month or two spell?
So I'd had a friend of mine that was at Walsall at the time, Rene Gilmartin, and he was saying that like the manager was interested in signing a midfielder and that he'd be willing to have a look at me. So I went over to Walsall and I had probably 3 or 4 days training, and they were due to play on the Saturday, and I'd worked really hard in the off season, and I went over to Walsall, and I for some reason for 3 or 4 days I just couldn't do anything wrong. I don't know what happened. Must have had something in my cornflakes or something like that, but I couldn't do anything wrong for 3 or 4 days. I genuinely, and I'm my own biggest critic, but I was exceptional in those 3 or 4 days. And he said to me, the manager was like, look, I want to have a look at you next week in a game, but like everything I see so far is excellent. Saturday comes, the game gets called off, and he gets sacked. So I was like, okay. I was like, that's the typical story, but that's what happened. And then they got a new guy in, Chris. I can't think of his second name. I know his face. I know his hairdo. Chris, I can't think of his second name, but this new manager came in, and I went in on the Monday or the Tuesday, whatever day it was, and he'd obviously dealing with all the squad, and I just kept training, and I told him my situation. He was like, that's fine. He's like, I'll assess you and have a look at you. So I was like, perfect. So I played in a trial game then, and he was almost keeping me on the long finger a little bit at the time. So he was saying, like, if you just wait, I'll know more in the next week or two. So I was like, right, well, I want to play games. So someone contacted me from Solihull Moors, and I was like, yeah, I'll sign and I'll get a month's wages from them. And I signed, and it was more of a hasty decision from me in that moment of hoping that Walsall would still stay and still be an option in 3 or 4 weeks' time, which in hindsight, like, it was never going to be the case. He was just holding me on the long finger with no intent. At that moment in time, I didn't sniff it, I didn't smell it, and I should have just picked up and gone, I'm going back. I'm leaving at that. So then at that stage it was late, so I just said I was going to go, and Alan was willing to sign me at Drogheda at the time.
It's actually Chris Hutchins. A quick Google search there telling me Chris Hutchins is the manager.
I was going to say Chris Hughes, but I was right with the HU, wasn't I? Chris Hughes, that's it, yeah.
You must count yourself very unlucky though as well in terms of going to Drogheda. They were on such a high of the under Paul Doolan, the Kiev game, doing so well, and then 2009 season obviously is like a completely different contrast. Financial troubles again there. It was kind of pattern throughout the league at that stage where teams were chasing the brass ring and suddenly collapsing. Then, so what was it like in terms of obviously Paul Doolan was gone, Alan Matthews came in. Well, again, was it a firefighting season or behind the scenes there was it difficult? What was it like at the time?
No, it was almost like, I think, look, I signed very late, like very, very late. Look, I didn't do pre-season or anything like that with the lads. I think maybe I had 2 weeks, and it was more a case of a lot of players who were out of contract or who hadn't got anything. I don't know. I might be saying this out of pocket, like, but more maybe they didn't have anything else, and Drogheda was their opportunity to showcase themselves. So it was almost like every single one of us is here for a reason, and we're all here to prove that we should be playing at this level, or essentially some of us left it too late and now this is what we're getting because we had other things that we were hoping for. But it almost helped. It helped build the camaraderie, and it helped build the culture that we were all together. And it was essentially like we're out every week just proving for ourselves first and foremost, and proving as a team that we're good enough to play at this level, and stay at this level. So yeah, things behind the scenes possibly, like I'd heard they'd had lunch and everything like that every day of the week up at Mosney. We were in Mosney. It was better than some other places. I've heard we were getting soup and sandwiches after training, which is still, that's at least it's something. It's not nothing. And it was a genuinely a really good experience because everybody was in it together, and we had some great characters in that group. Great character. We had Paul Shields, Robbie Farrell, Paul Crowley. Like we had some really, really good experienced players who've been around the block, and then we had some talented young players too.
Obviously then 2010 comes around, moving on to Shamrock Rovers. How good of a coach or a manager was Michael O'Neill? Yeah,
Michael was brilliant. I liked working with Michael because he filled you full of belief, He really did. He filled you, like, he'd make you feel like you were on top of the world at times, and then if you weren't good enough, he'd certainly let you know. I enjoyed my experience with him and with Trevor as well as his assistant at the time. I really enjoyed that environment, and I feel like I thrived in that environment for the first couple of months before probably I got injured towards the end of the season and struggled a little bit. But I certainly I loved my time there. I really did the first time. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was a good dressing room too as well. Some good players, and obviously by the end of the season, winning that league medal, like it must be a great feeling to win your first league medal.
Yeah, it was a great experience, but it was almost like the club and the team, I'd say the squad of players was moving in that direction, and they hadn't quite gotten over the line the year before, and it was almost like you felt like, right, well, they're entrusting me, or they're really showing belief in me that they feel that I can, not just me, the other players we had Chrissy Turner and other players like Johnny O'Connor was there as well, but like they really believed that like we could help getting them over the line, and we did, which is fantastic. But that sense of belief and it was an enjoyable season as well. It was another one where I felt like I developed and got better and enjoyed every moment of it.
How would you enjoy the Scottish experience the year after?
I enjoyed the first couple of months. I think it was one of them. The opportunity arose, and it was like, will I or won't I? And I was like, well, I could be sitting here a long time and never get the chance to play. Again, it was Hamilton. Was it a massive, massive club in the SPL? No, but it was still an opportunity to try something different in the SPL. So I tried it first couple of months. I kind of got my feet under me towards the end of the season, and unfortunately by then we were relegated. I came back for pre-season, and Rovers had actually touched base about me returning in the summer, and Hamilton weren't willing to let me do it. And the 4 or 5 months that I spent in the first division in Scotland were they weren't enjoyable at all. They were really, really, really difficult. It just wasn't a great experience at all. So
would you regret the fact that because obviously moving to Hamilton, 2011 season against Rovers, obviously they qualified for the Europa League. Are you looking from a distance going, I would love to be part of that squad playing in Europe, or do you put it out of your mind and say, look, I made my decision, I moved on?
Yeah, no, I think at the start I'd made my decision. I was happy and I wished them all the best and stuff like that. And the team was doing well. I think it was more when it returned in the summer, 6 months later, that they were in the qualifying stages, and Michael was like, I want to take you back. Do you think you can make it happen? Blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And tried to make it happen. It didn't happen. I think then it was almost like, that was a bit more difficult, because it was like, I should really be part of that, but the club here won't let me go, and then in hindsight in December, when things unfolded the way they did, where it was like, look, let's just mutually agree. It's not happening for me. It's not happening for you. Neither party's enjoying this. I think those moments were a little bit harder, because you're not in I wouldn't say you're not in a good spot. That's the wrong term, but you're not exactly on the top of your game where everything else is irrelevant. You're uncertain. You're like, well, I'm not playing well. And if I was there, or if X, Y, and Z happened, well, maybe I'd be playing better and I'd be enjoying it a bit more. I think that's probably when it hit me a little bit more.
How does the move then, the Pats come about then? Is the agent, Liam Buckley, did you just come home and hope to find a club, or what happened there?
Yeah, I'd come home and I'd come home right before Christmas, I think, a couple of weeks before Christmas, and I just reached out to McGuinness, Stephen at the PFAI, and said, like, look, I need to just get training. I want people to know I'm available. And I went on the trip to Iceland, missed a penalty in the final, and then I think, I'd had conversations with Trevor and Bucko before I went, and Liam actually said, like, he's the one who was like, I think you should play as a six, as a defensive midfielder. That'll benefit you. And I was all ears. I was just hungry to play and just grow and get better. And I was sick at that point of at Hamilton. We didn't really try and play football, so I just wanted to really just try and play football. And he saw a lot of positives in my game that maybe I didn't know at that point.
That season, then obviously, look, it was Liam Buckley's first season. They'd done well. You kind of see the squads growing, building, and then Trevor Crawley obviously leaves the end of the season, goes to Shamrock Rovers. I assume that was obviously one of the big factors for you to go back to Rovers, was following Trevor Crawley.
Yeah, I'd had a couple of experiences working with Trevor, and I enjoyed working with him, and I felt like he was gonna turn into a really good manager, and it was a chance to probably go back to Rovers. He was building a good squad, and I'd known a lot of the guys, so yeah, it was a new experience to go and try that. So yeah, I took the chance.
And at the time then, obviously, look, because they had the success, the Michael O'Neill era, Stephen Kenny came in. Obviously, we know what happened there. Brian Laws came in. and there was obviously issues there. And then Trevor came in, kind of steady the ship, but wouldn't have hit the heights maybe as Rovers fans. Was it difficult at the time? Because obviously Rovers fans experienced such success in Michael O'Neill, and suddenly Trevor Crowley slightly, the team is not as maybe performing as well as it was. Is that a difficult dressing room to be in the time, or did you just put out your mind?
No, I think like when you look around the dressing room, like that squad was as talented as any. I know I spoke about the Shell squad, but we had some unbelievable players in that dressing room, players who had won leagues at Rovers and won leagues at different places too, at different clubs. So it wasn't like there was a lack of experience. It was more the time I didn't feel this, but the experience now and being in the coaching side, maybe we didn't have the right blend or the right mix of players. We had a lot of talented players there at the club, but you can't always just rely on the talent and that to get you through. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, it needs, it's almost, sounds stupid, it's almost like a recipe. It needs a mix of everything to make it work, and we probably didn't have that, Now, again, on paper, if you looked at it, you'd be like, they should win the league, no problem. But we didn't. We just didn't do enough.
Yeah. And obviously then, like you said, Pats then go on to win the league that season. Again, it's kind of a similar question I've already asked, where you kind of look and going like, geez, if I had to stay the Pats league title there, or like, some players might be thinking that, or, it's not coming to your mind because obviously come back to Pats the year after. So like, what's your kind of your thoughts then, say like October, September 2013, what's kind of your mindset?
Yeah, I was struggling with my mental health, with my performances in the game and my enjoyment of the game at that time. So in all honesty, like, yeah, I'd still speak to a lot of the lads at that time, like Jared O'Brien and Clarkey, like good friends of mine. So I'd still be speaking to them, and I'd be delighted for them. Greg, Kenny, you know what I mean? I was happy that they won the league. Like, but again, I didn't give it over. Didn't give it like over the top thought. Like, I was just like, all right, it is what it is. Because again, I wasn't in a great place either. So it wasn't exactly like something that was in the forefront of my mind. I was just more disappointed at how my season had gone personally.
Just actually, you would have played a bit with Gary Twigg actually, because as you mentioned, good strikers, mentioned around Jason Burnett kind of players, and Christy Fagan as well. How good was Gary Twigg?
Oh, Twiggy as a finisher, he was outrageous, and he'd have games where you wouldn't even notice him, and then he'd pop up and score. But the other one that you mentioned there, who I think is so undervalued and so underrated, maybe not from Pats fans, but he's the best striker, like, is Christy Fagan. As a player on the pitch and playing with Christy, like, he made the midfielder's job easy. He was absolutely exceptional. And then as a person as well, he was incredible.
Yeah, well, that's kind of obviously 2014 season's a big year, obviously with the cup and all. But just even actually, this is kind of more of a Pat's question. But obviously, Champions League season, Keith Fatty comes back in the squad. Yourself comes back. The great draw away to Legia Warsaw. It's 1-1. Was there? I know there was injuries at the time, but was it disappointment what happened in the home game that time when we kind of had the 1-1 draw? It was nearly 1-0 over there, the last second equaliser, and obviously then, like I said, the home draw losing 4 or 5-0. Was that a disappointment dressing time, considering that done so well to get the result abroad and then to come back and then lose the game 4-1 in that way?
Yeah, it was. It was a disappointing. It was a disappointing experience to be. They were a good side, and they didn't perform when we were out there, and they turned the screw on us that night. They really did. I didn't play, and I came on in the first leg. I can't remember if I came on in the second leg at home or not. I vaguely remember that. I just remember the performance, and we matched them in the first leg, but the second leg they were far and above the level that we even, if we were on the top of a game that night, we needed them to be levels lower than what they were capable of, and they weren't that night, so they just comfortably turned us over.
What's your memories of the 2014 Cup final?
my memories of it. I remember getting on the field.
We'll stick to match day. The match day will stick then, and maybe the post celebration. You can keep that off the record.
No, I didn't even go to the post match celebration. I was thinking more of the experience. 2014, I felt like I had a good contribution. I just wanted to return to the level that I knew I could play at, and I feel like that year my performances were pretty good. I played. There was myself, Fats, Killian and Greg in there, and I obviously knew that I was the outsider looking in. they'd won a league. Killian and Greg had the year before. Fats was coming back, who was an international. So I'm not naive enough, but I backed myself to be like, if I'm playing at the top of my level and they're not at it, like I should be in the team. Simple as that. And there was times when, most of the season I was on the outside looking in, but then I was in the team and I was playing well. So I knew going into the cup final that I probably wasn't going to play, and I just wanted us to win. And Ken O'Mahon was with me on the bench, and we were delighted because we were good friends with Christie. I was absolutely ecstatic for the club, for the fans, for the players, and more so for Christie, like in the performance that he had. And I got on the field for about 5 seconds. So I won the cup. I contributed in the earlier rounds. I had a good performance in the semi-final, I think, if I remember correctly. But like, did I really contribute to winning the cup? No. I have the medal at home somewhere, but didn't really contribute on cup final day. So I don't really see it like that. And my old man used to joke with me that, like, yeah, you've been to the Aviva 3 times and you still haven't really contributed to winning the cup. So that's just my personal stance on it, you know.
Yeah. Well, I suppose as a squad, obviously, because you were part of the 2012 squad losing to Derry, and then kind of the rematch then, like, obviously, was that an extra incentive going into the game for the players that 2012 had happened, the defeat next time? Was there kind of like, we owe these one after 2 years ago, and obviously the 55, whatever it is, years heartbreak of not having the win. So it kind of all builds up into the moment of, 2014 cup final.
Yeah. I think we had real belief going into it, and I think that probably the players and the squad, most of the squad that had won the cup the year, or the league, I beg your pardon, the year before, probably had more belief going into it after winning the league. And once you win something, you know what it takes, you know what's required, and you get a little bit more of a belief that you can actually do it. And I think that was probably the case too.
What was Liam Buckley like as a manager?
He was very laid back. He was very laid back. He had a certain way that he wanted to play, and he really put that across, of like that he wants people to play. He'd hate that we wouldn't sometimes play as well as he would have liked. You know what I mean? I think as a person, he was a great person. He reached out to me a lot of times here about players over the last couple of years, even when he was at Sligo. And yeah, he was a really, really good man, soft-spoken man, didn't really like confrontation or anything like that. So good experience as a bucko. Yeah, enjoyed him. Enjoyed his experience.
Obviously, he played under a few league winning managers. Did he mention Dermot Keeley, Pat Fenlon, Michael O'Neill, Liam Buckley? Before them, or maybe another coach, was there any particular coach you look at now, starting your own coaching career, that you take most from, or do you take bits from all of them?
No, I think I take bits from all of them. Like, I think, like, when I had Dermot, how honest Dermot was great. Like, at the time, did I think he was honest? No, I thought he was just over the top. But then you grow up and you learn a lot more, and you try and remember the snippets that he had and try and flip them and be like, well, that's why he was doing these things. No, I think everybody certainly had an impact on me, and I'd like to think that I took little snippets from them all along the way, you know.
If you had to pick one coach growing up or playing as a player in the League of Ireland that you thought was the best one you worked under, would you name one?
Probably coach. I'd say Trevor as a coach was this is 15 years ago now, probably. Yeah, Trevor was ahead of his time, like back then, just with his exercises, his understanding, his description of details and stuff like that was excellent as a coach. Was really, really good, and there's probably not many. There's not many that would have been at his level that I've experienced in the League of Ireland. Like managers, and the word coach now was getting thrown around. Everybody's a head coach, but like back then it was like you have a manager and you have a coach and or an assistant coach, and that's assistant manager essentially. So that's what Trevor was, where he fell into it, took the training and did all that, and the managers just looked after everything else.
Now I'm going to ask you this question, and I don't want you don't have to feel pressured into saying any names or anything like that, but just kind of going into coaching yourself now, is there any aspects of kind of coaches that you've had that you've kind of seen as negative, or that you try and avoid maybe in your own coaching career? Like, you don't have to kind of specifically say, Trevor did this and that's something I want to stay away from, but any kind of particular aspects that you didn't like, or that you thought maybe harmed your game?
From coaches particularly, or from myself and my personality?
from coaches kind of in your own career?
Yeah, I think like we always toy with this. I always toy with this with Stephen Hogan, who's the head coach here, and Alan, who's the other assistant coach, the two Irish lads. That like, yeah, people say like they want honesty and all that now, and they want it to be straight. Like, but you almost can't be so honest, because like people can't take it. Like if you're too honest, you might just genuinely hurt someone's feelings. Like you might actually hurt them to the point where like the relationship could be tarnished, and you're trying to do that from a good place, like oh well, I want the best for you, and this is what I feel. Now, whether you're right or you're wrong, you're still trying to do it from the correct place to help that person understand that maybe it wasn't good enough or something along those lines. I think some of the coaches that I had and spoke to the players in a way where they were, it was over the top, but they were honest. Maybe their communication skills in those moments weren't the greatest, and their choice of words weren't the greatest, but they were just being honest, And I think possibly now for me, like as a coach, finding a moment to be honest and finding the timing of it, finding also the delivery of it, all that sort of stuff is important, and the tone at which you're being honest is crucial. Because if you just keep coming at somebody all the time, at the end of the day, it just causes friction, and then the relationship, like I said, is tarnished. That player doesn't trust you. You're at loggerheads with the other player, and they don't value your opinion, so you don't get anything. So I'd say honesty, but in the right context, is important.
Obviously, at Pats then 2015, you have a great year individually. I know it's a poor season in terms of where we were winning leagues and cups, but individually played very well, won player of the year. What was the deciding factor for yourself to go abroad? Was just the fact that you want to try something new, or was there any particular reason? And how did you end up in the United States?
Yeah, I think I'd had it in my head for a little while, and then my agent, who was one of my good friends at the time, was always trying to push me to experience something new. And I was coming to the point where I'd been around to a couple of the clubs. It was going to be the same season again. I had a choice to go to Rovers again with Nutsy. I had a choice to stay with Pats, or I could have gone to Linfield, which they would have been really good experiences. But I just found like let's just try something. I was turning 29 at the time, and I was like, let's just try something new and experience it and see what it's like. And I trusted the people that I was coming over to in the US, which is a big factor.
And how did you settle down with Bethlehem Steel?
Yeah, at the start it was very difficult, but then I got introduced to a role that I kind of enjoyed, and it was almost putting me on the pathway to start to be a coach. So it worked out in the end. I gave up some of my later years, probably competing at a level that I probably should have been at, but it was more for the longevity of what was to be, and helped me start to be, like I said, on the pathway to be a coach.
So what was kind of your first coaching role then?
I was coaching with the little kids at the Philadelphia Union Academy, almost like a drop-in coach. I drop in when I was still playing in the evening times and take different teams, and then I started in their foundation phase with like the U10s at the time, U11s at the time, and then just started to grow through that when I retired into the full time in the academy, still at the foundation phase in that U10, U9 to U11, and then was the assistant at the under 15s.
And that's the MLS club now you'd be with, is it?
Yeah, that was with the Philadelphia Union, the MLS Academy, yeah.
And are they linked to, or were they linked to Bethlehem Steel? Or
they were linked, and then they just changed the name from Bethlehem Steel to Philly Union too. Oh. So that's kind of how it worked.
And in terms of then, obviously, did you finish playing? Were you player coach this time, or when did you finish playing?
So I finished playing in 2019. I finished November 2019. I was almost like the opportunity to keep playing was possibly there here in the States, but I would have probably played for a year or two more and then been left with no pathway into the coaching side of things. So I took the decision to just go off and finish playing and just start coaching full time with the academy, which was an unbelievable experience. And
in terms of then the facilities then Philadelphia Union have, like, cause I know from your chatting off air, the USL, MLS clubs, the facilities, just from talking to people around the game, there are top class.
Yeah, they're outrageous, and they're just about to build a new one a new one down on the waterfront, which is going to be exceptional. Exceptional. They have at the moment they have an indoor field, 2 indoor fields, an outdoor field, and they have 2 training fields down at the first team complex, and they're about to build the first team complex to house the academy. So yeah, the facilities that are here in the US for not only just the top level on MLS, for USL and where it's trending are phenomenal. There's no complaints from that side of things.
And how did you make the move to Colorado?
The old coach that was at Bethlehem had got the job and had asked me would I come out, and Stephen as well, the assistant coach at the time, had asked me would I come out and join them, and that had been the plan for quite a while, that when they got a USL job that I was going to join the staff. And thankfully it's been a good 2.5 years so far. Obviously Brendan, who brought me out, was moved on to Houston Dynamo on the MLS, and Stephen Hogan, the ex-Belvo player, is now the head coach here, along with Alan McCann, like I said, as the assistant, and then myself, who's the technical director. So it's certainly a strong Irish core here, but it's thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, it's interesting for people listening that, you know, you look across in England and there's not a lot of kind of head coaches and assistant head coach that be Irish, and looking across off the United States, looking at yourself and Steve and Alan, like, you know, having an Irish kind of management team there, it's not very common to see outside of Ireland, really.
No, it's certainly not. And we've all had different paths here. You know, we all had different relationships before we probably got to know each other. You know, and it's not like we're all here and we're all on the same page 100%. There's no doubt about that. But we're all not the same person either. We're all not here to say yes to everything. We all have different inputs and different outlooks on things and how it likes to be done. And Stephen's the head coach, and he has his philosophy, and we're right behind that, while still almost not just conforming to saying, yeah, you're 100% right. And I think that's why we work so well together. It's such a healthy staff, because we have a really good, healthy working relationship.
How do you find the standard of the USL? Like, I know a lot of people listen here might not be familiar with it. Obviously, would know the MLS, but like, it's obviously tier 2, but it's still a high enough standard. Speaking to people who are playing the game there or have just recently retired, they speak very highly of it.
Yeah, it's a really, really high level. Like, there's a lot of good quality in here. Like, and there's a lot of clubs from overseas now starting to probably see that there's value in signing players at this level for relatively next to nothing compared to the money that's been thrown around, and hope to develop them. But we have some top players playing in this league. We have ex internationals from throughout the world. We have ex US internationals, and then we have current internationals that play. Yes, okay, they don't play for Germany, Holland, or England, but they play for their countries. We have Jamaican internationals who are currently on our roster, who are some top players. There's an El Salvador and international, the captain, who's on our team here. That's just to name a few. So there's a lot of talent throughout the USL, a lot of talent.
Could we see a few more League of Ireland players dipping over to the Colorado to play? Would you be scouting over here looking players, or would you be further?
We do. We went over. I remember the staff went over last year to watch Rovers and Bohs, and we had a look at a player, and we were interested before we watched him, but he didn't perform in the game, and we didn't like some of his behaviours in the game, and we didn't pursue that. He's still playing in the League of Ireland right now, but for us, it's more of a, with regards to that, it's more of a position specific thing with regards to League of Ireland players. That's just how we look at it. You know, we can find players here that we can find goalkeepers in this country, no problem. But Ireland has a specific position in our mind for what we can get the best value for, you know, and those positions are right now they're filled on our team, and it's not something we're looking at, but it is something that maybe in the coming seasons we start to probably delve a little bit more to.
In terms of the project at Colorado, is it simply to stay in the USL, or what we've seen recently last 5 to 6, 7, 8 years, teams they start in the USL and then I know you have to buy your way into the MLS. It's a bit more complicated, but is that a plan going forward that Colorado see themselves going into the MLS, or?
I don't foresee that, because we're an hour south of Denver, and the Colorado Rapids are up there.
Yeah.
Where Portick Smith is up there as the GM, and Conor Ronan is up there as well. Just 2 Irish people, but we don't see ourselves jumping into MLS right now. USL is a big enough market, and it's more, MLS is more selective on the cities that they place new franchises in to help try and grow the game in the US. So it's not something that we would probably see.
What's your own plan then, James? You've great time so far, and just a couple more questions. Just in terms of yourself, then, like, do you see yourself in the future, looking long term, being a head coach yourself, or is that too far looking ahead, or just simply looking at the moment being a coach and a coaching staff?
No, most definitely. I think like I'm not in this just to plod along. Like I have aspirations of being a head coach, 100%. Like, and I think I'm hopefully trending in that direction. Like, but I have a lot to learn, and we've learned a lot, but a lot more to go. And I think just once every day, I'm continuously getting better as a coach and understanding, yes, the game, yes, tactics, all that sort of stuff, but understanding people, understanding the environment, the hierarchy within clubs, ownership. There's a lot to learn about being a head coach, especially at this level. And I think I am trending in the right direction. I want to be a head coach, and I'm positive I will be one day. But it's almost the opportunity has to arise at the right time for me, at the right time for other people in my life. And if that doesn't come, it doesn't come. But right now, I'm happy with where I am, but I don't want to just stagnate either.
Could you see yourself come back to coaching the League of Ireland, or would you solely say it's more concentrated on America now?
No, I'd say my priority is certainly to stay in America, in the US, most definitely. But I wouldn't be turning my nose up to opportunities back home with the League of Ireland. I'd certainly be all ears and take everything that comes across with the kind of the mindset of, yes, this may work. It may be for me. It may not be for me. But I wouldn't dismiss anything. Most definitely not.
James, great time. Just one last question. If you were to look back to all the players you played with and you had to pick a 5-a-side team, who would you reckon be in it?
Great question. What a question. Very good question. I'd have Gif Fagan. I'd have Wes Houlihan in there. I'd put Shawnee O'Connor in there too. It's a very good question, lads. Do you have to have a goalkeeper, yeah?
I have to have a goalkeeper, yeah.
All right, okay. I'd put Manus in there, Alan Manus in there, and then I'd probably put Ken O'Man at the back. Or Dan Murray, I beg your pardon. Dan Murray or Ken O'Man, you can take your pick.
It's a decent 5-a-side team. Pick one player to stand out there out of those five. Who would the best player we played with?
I can't claim Wezzo. Like, I can't claim that. I'd say Christie.
James, a great time. Thanks so much. Look, we'll chat again soon.
Thanks a million, guys. Really appreciate it.
James.
And there's kind of a lot of grumbling about maybe we don't have enough Premier League players, but in terms of the Championship, but
what's the point in grumbling about it?
But the step
I can't hold about it, can I? If they're not playing the play, what's the point of me grumbling?
But the step up to international football in the Championship is it's an easy managed.
Well, I tell you about when we played in 2002. What's the point of me grumbling? We had lads who were all at the bottom of the Premier League, real scrapping away. Kints and Matty Holland, and I had Gary Breen who hadn't even got a club. What's the point of me grumbling? So I don't subscribe to that. You know, you just whatever it is, whatever I've got, I'll get them together and make the best of them and try and make sure we qualify. Grumbling is not one of the things I do.
You can subscribe to each new episode of the ExtraTime.ie Sportscast on iTunes. Please give a rating or add a comment there to let us know your views.
Welcome back to the third half. Stephen is still alongside me. That wasn't a bad 5-a-side team mentioned, was it? Wes Houlihan, Christy Fagan, Sean O'Connor, Alan Manus and Dan Murray. That was a decent team.
Yeah, not too bad. I think my favourite part of it was the fact that he asked, did he actually have to have a goalkeeper in it? They'd be doing well to be just running around keeping the ball out themselves. But yeah, fairly handy team, I'd say.
Before we wrap up and look through the fixtures, obviously one of the big games this weekend, Bohs Pats. Stephen, we already mentioned Bohs earlier on. We don't have to go too much in detail about it, but another kind of, I say, milestone for their season, that if they can get through this hurdle, they will maybe further cement the idea that they will push on this season. Or is that, again, like we said earlier on, that's still too premature to say?
Yeah, it's still probably too premature to say. I mean, obviously, you know, whichever team comes out on top, it's going to be a decent scalp for them because, you know, obviously for Bohs in particular, Rovers and Pats are the big ones. Kind of the last couple of years in more recent history, and then I suppose Shell's in there as well. Always, you know, it's always a good game. But I think, yeah, like I say, it's so congested in the midfield that that any kind of results, 3-4 games time, Bohs could find themselves in fourth or fifth. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it can kind of go either way. I won't lie, and I will say that there will be a seriously good feel good factor around the place if Bohs do come out the right side of that one. And I'd say there'd be a lot more rival fans wound up, even more so than they already have been, with Bohs fans going around talking about the title. And I mean, after that, I'm just looking at the fixture list here. Drogs away, it'll be a tricky enough game going up there. But at the same time, I think a lot of people would expect Bohs to come out away with a result there. UCD away then is the next one after that, and then Cork at home. So, yeah, I know Pats have been on a decent run of form, but kind of from Bohs' point of view, there's 4 very winnable games in our next 4 there. So, yeah, who knows if they go on a decent run and win all 4 of them, may never hear the end of it.
Well, the only I'll say to you is that you still have to watch out for the main man, Chris Forrester, your former players, hit some form, 5 goals so far this season. So
he has, all right, yeah. And I saw a comparison that was put up by the league Twitter page himself and Ali Coote. I think Forrester has 5 goals, no assists, and Coote has 2 goals, 3 assists, or something like that. It would have been 2 goals, 5 assists in 9 games, something along those lines. Anyway,
I think he has 5 assists. Yeah, I think that was mentioned.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, sorry, 9 games, 2 goals, 5 assists, and a missed penalty that I think ended up in St. Peter's School that time against UCD. But it's kind of two of the league's informed midfielders now. I know Coote didn't have a part to play in Derry, which possibly made the result even more impressive considering his form recently. But hopefully he'll be back for that game and we'll be able to see 2 of the league's informed midfielders going toe to toe.
How do you see the game going?
It'll probably depend on how unscathed Bohs got out of Derry. See if Coote comes back, and I know you mentioned Pat's had 1 or 2 injuries, but I'd still be fairly optimistic that Bohs will be able to come away with a win.
I'm going to go for 1-1. I'll take a 1-1. Very negative result, but I'll take it.
Would you take it now going into it, yeah?
Yeah, I take 1-0, yeah. I think 1-0 will be a good result. This game keeps momentum factor going. As they say, if you get the draws away to your rivals and beat them at home. So, look, take a draw, build on it, 5 unbeaten, then after that, I'd be quite happy with that. 3 wins and 2 draws. So, keep the season ticking over. Look, we'll have a quick run through the SSE Electricity fixtures this weekend. On Friday night, then we have UCD, Cork City, as already mentioned, Bohs, Pats. Shamrock Rovers face Shells, another Dublin Derby. Sligo Rovers, Drogheda United on the Saturday, and on the Sunday then we have Dundalk, Derry City. In the first division we have Galway United, Bray, Athlone Town Cove, Waterford, Kerry, Finn Harps, Treaty, and Longford Town, Wexford. And returning this weekend is the Women's Parent Division. We have Shells, Treaty, DLR Wave, Sligo, Galway, Shamrock Rovers, Cork City, Peamount, and Wexford Youth, Athlone Town, all on Saturday night. And be sure to check out the extratime.com voice notes podcast with Ocean Langan this weekend. As I said previously, another podcast has been the best addition to the League of Ireland this year. So be sure to tune in. Stephen, thanks very much, and I'll chat to you on Friday.
Yeah, no worries, Luke. May the best team win as long as it's Bohs. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, James Chambers, and we'll chat to you all next week.